reached out for my dreams, I reached out for my vision, I reached out for help that I thought I needed. Cause reaching out is the proof of passion.
Hello, my name is Confident. I'm going to walk you through the activity on page 131 of the equations, manipulation, as well as the word problems. Now I'm going to look at question number 11. So we're going to look at question number 11. Now in question number 11 says the width of a rectangle is 3 meters less than its length. Calculate the length and the width if the area is 75 square meters. So now what we are discovering, or from the information that is given, they are telling us that the width, so this we'll call it our width and this we'll call it our length. So they are saying the width of a rectangle is 3 meters less. So if it is 3 meters less than its length, let the length be x. So if the length is x, then the width is going to be 3 meters less. In other ways, it will be x minus 3. Remember, it is 3 meters less than its length. And then they are also telling us that the area, so the area is everything that is inside the area. So they are telling us that the area of this particular rectangle is 75 square meters. So I can say my area here is 75 square meters. Now the question says then calculate the what? Calculate the length and the width. So with this information given, what you need to do is to remember that the area of a triangle, because they already given you the area of a triangle, not a triangle actually, the area of a rectangle is equal to length times width. So now our length is x and our width is x minus 3. But there is something that they told you. Remember, they told you that this particular A, which is the area, is 75 square meters. So here then you have to solve for x, meaning x minus 3 is equal to 75. And then you open the bracket, you've got x squared minus 3x. You transpose 75 to cross the sign, it becomes minus 75 is equal to 0. You can solve it. I'll suggest that you use your quadratic equation so that you can quickly find your values of x. If I can bring my calculator, it will be, so with my calculator I've got minus b, which is minus 3, and then I'll start with the positive one, square root of negative 3 squared minus 4, and my a is a 1 and my c is a negative 75, and then that I'm dividing by 2 and my a is a 1. I'm just using the quadratic equation. So now what am I getting? I'm getting that the first one is 10.289, which is the positive one, 10.289, and then if I can work on that, it is 10.289 x so my x is equal to 10.289, or my x is equal to if I now choose the negative one, So my x is equal to negative 7.289. So it's negative 7.289. But you will remember that you cannot get a negative length, so this is not the answer actually. The length then is 10.289. Now the question says calculate the length and the width. So which means if you have got your length as that, then for the width, remember the width will be x minus 3, which is equal to 10.289 minus a 3, and I think your answer therefore becomes 7.289. Now don't forget the units that you're given. They were giving us in meters, so even the units must be in meters. So the length is that one and the width is that. So that is the solution to the question number 11. So if ever you were supposed to solve that, that was the solution to that particular question. Let us move on to look at the other question that is simple. I'm also going to look at question number 13. I'll be putting them in pairs. So now let us look at question number 13. This is just simple algebra. I'll come to the other questions that involve the speed, the distance, and the time. So now let us look at question number 13. Now question number 13 says the sum of two consecutive even numbers is 100. The sum of two consecutive even numbers squared is 100. Calculate the numbers. Now if they talk about consecutive, means, for example, if I've got 1, I've got 2, I've got 3, so these are consecutive numbers because they are following each other. So that's what is meant by consecutive. But there is a key word here. They are saying the sum of two consecutive even numbers. So in this case, you'll be having you can start with a 2, the next consecutive number will be a 4, and the next consecutive number will be a 6. Or I can choose, maybe let's say 98. The next consecutive number will be 100, and the next consecutive number will be 102. So it can be any number. But what you're going to notice in consecutive numbers, the first to the second, there is a plus 2. The second to the third is a plus 2. So whatever number you choose, you'll see that you are adding 2. Whatever number, this was 102. Just to correct that, it was 102. So you are seeing that the next consecutive number is a what? Is a plus 2. So when they are saying from the question, the sum of two consecutive even numbers squared. So for example, the first thing that we can say is let the first number be equal to A and the second number be equal to B. So now what you are having then, you are going to say, they're saying the sum, which is the sum of two consecutive even numbers squared. You must square A squared plus B squared is equal to 100, right? But now there is something that you must understand about the B, is that they said they are consecutive. So B is, you can write B in terms of A, in which B is equal to A plus a 2. Why? Because when B is since B is following A, so we just have to add a positive 2 from what I was showing in this particular example. So in this case, you can then follow up to say A squared plus A plus 2 squared is equal to 100. You must actually have a single variable in that. So if you solve this, you're going to have A squared plus, you open that, you expand that square, it will be a squared, I think, plus a times 2, which is 4a plus 4 minus 100 is equal to a 0. So you have got 2a squared plus 4a minus 96 is equal to a 0. So now you can use your quadratic equation. Again, if I can bring my calculator, if I'm using my quadratic equation here, I'm going to have minus 4, start with the plus, square root of 4 squared, minus 4, my a is a 2, and my c is a negative 96, all over, I can go down there, 2, and my a is a 2. So if I've done that, my first a is a 6, if you can see that, or my a is, if I can play backward and get my negative there, my a is a negative 8. Now this cannot be the solution because you cannot get two consecutive numbers in being a negative. So now the first number, as you can see, a is equal to 6. Now you come back to say, since a is equal to 6, but you still remember that the second consecutive number was a b, and we said b was a plus 2, so b was 6 plus 2, which is equal to an 8. So the two numbers are, if you can round up, it's 6, and the second number is 8. So this is the answer. So that's how you can approach those particular kind of problems. Let us move on again to look at another problem that is similar to the ones that we're doing that focuses on algebra. It is question number 15. It says the perpendicular height of a triangle is 20 millimeters more than the length of its base. Calculate the perpendicular height and the length of the base if the area of the triangle is equal to 4,000 square millimeters. Now in this case, if I can bring up my triangle, let me come up with a triangle. Let's consider this particular triangle. Says the perpendicular height of a triangle. So a perpendicular height, this is our perpendicular height. If I can use a different pen, perpendicular height. Why are we saying perpendicular height? Because there is a 90 degrees. So it says the perpendicular height of a triangle is 20 millimeters more than the length of its base. So this is our perpendicular height, we call it h, and this is our base, we call it b. So it says the perpendicular height of a triangle is 20 millimeters more than the length of its base. So now we are going to say, let the base be equal to x. So if the base is x, so here we have got x. Now they are saying, now if our base again is x and we want to find our height, in this case they told us something that the height of a triangle is 20 millimeter more, so which means this particular height is equal to x plus 20, because it is 20 millimeters more than the base. Now the next question then says, that is question, it says 15, the perpendicular height of a triangle is 20 millimeter more than its length. Calculate the perpendicular height and the length of the base if the area of the triangle is 4,000 square meters. So remember, the area is everything that is inside. They are saying that area is 4,000 square meters. So now the first thing that you must remind yourself is, what is the area of a triangle? Now the area of a triangle, which is A, is equal to half times base, or half base times height. Half times base times height. And now in this case, which is half, using the triangle we're given, half times my base is x times my height is x plus 20. If I simplify that, it would be half x and x plus 20. Let me not open that bracket. I can leave it like that, or I can open the bracket. But also, what we are told is that particular area A is equal to 4,000 square meters. So in this case, you have got your A being that and your A being that. So you have to equate. So what you are having, therefore, it means half x, I wasn't supposed to put the bracket as such, half x plus 20 is equal to 4,000. Then you have to solve for x, in which case I can multiply both sides by 2, and what you do on the left you do on the right, just to remove that fraction. So what I have now, if I open this bracket, I have x squared plus 20x, and I transpose that, minus 8,000 is equal to 0. Now I must solve for x. If I bring my calculator and I want to solve for x, and I'm going to use the quadratic equation, which is minus 20, start with the plus, square root of negative 20 squared minus 4 into 1 into negative 8,000. And then over 2 into 1, remember it's 2a. I'm using the quadratic equation here, and the first answer that you get is your x is equal to 80. So I'll have that x is equal to 80. Or, now that is the first part of x. Let's find the second x. If you can play backward, put a negative, x is equal to minus 100. So this cannot be the answer, because you cannot get a negative length. So our first part is to say our x, which is the breadth, is equal to 80, and the units that they were using is millimeters, and the height is equal to x plus 20, and our height is 100 millimeters. So the question says find the breadth and the height of this particular triangle, and then the answer is 80 and 20. So that is another way, or one way of doing that particular question. Let us move on to look at question number 16. It is also similar. Now let us look at this question number 16. It says the hypotenuse of a right angled triangle. So we are having here a right angled triangle, and remember this is our hypotenuse, which is our h. I'll use actually to say it is our r. That is the hypotenuse, to avoid the height and the base. So this is our r. The hypotenuse of a right angled triangle is 130 millimeters. So you are told that this particular height is 130 millimeters long, and the circumference is 300 millimeters. So now, what do they mean when they say the circumference? You must remember that circumference is the distance right round a shape. So if we're saying the distance right round the shape, the circumference means if this is our r and this is our height, I'll call it h, or I'll call it our y, is our height, and this is our base, I will call it our x. So the circumference, I'll call it our c. Circumference is the distance right round. It is the x plus the y plus the r. So if you are adding the distance right around this particular shape, it is the circumference. The word circumference is mainly used when we are dealing with a circle, because it says the circumference of a circle is the distance right around the circle. Another word that they could have used here to say circumference is the word perimeter. That's the proper way to say the perimeter of a right angle triangle, because the circumference mainly it is used in a circle. But nevertheless, what you need to remember is by saying circumference, they are saying you add the x, the y, and the r. So if you continue, they told you that the circumference of this is our c here is equal to 300 millimeters. So now you can come up with an equation which says x plus y plus the r, which is 130, is equal to 300, and then you can remain with x plus y on one side, which is equal to 300 minus 30. If I can have that, 300 minus 30, minus 130, it's 170. So here I have got 170. So this then becomes my first equation, which is my equation 1. Now let us come up with the second equation. The second equation also similarly, what you are given, remember the moment they talk about the right angle triangle and they give you our r there is 130, you can come up with the Pythagoras Theorem, which says x squared plus y squared is equal to r squared. Now if we continue with that, we've got x squared plus y squared is equal to 130 squared. If we focus on, this is our equation 2, I'll call it our equation 2 here. Alright, now if we look at equation 1, you can now make either x or y the subject of the formula. I'll make x, so x is equal to 170 minus a y. This is my equation 3. So now I'm going to take my equation 3 into equation 2. So what am I going to have? I'm going to have, where there is x, I'm going to have 170 minus y squared plus y squared is equal to 130 squared. So now this is algebra that you need to be good in. So in other ways, if you expand this, it will be your 170 minus a y, and your 170 minus a y plus y squared is equal to 130 squared. If I can get more space below. So what you have here will be, if you expand this, you have got your 170 squared. Now minus 170 minus 170 is minus 340y, right? And then plus y squared is equal to 130 squared. So this is what you're having. If you now simplify it so that it becomes a normal quadratic equation, you are going to have now your 2y squared minus your 340y, and then you've got plus 170 squared minus 130 squared is equal to a 0. So you are having your 2y squared minus 340y. If I take my calculator to find the 170 squared minus a 130 squared, so I'll have a 170 squared minus 130 squared. I get 12,000. So it will be a positive 12,000 is equal to a 0. So now the next thing I need to do is to use my quadratic equation to solve for y. So if I'm going to use my quadratic equation there, I have got minus bracket, it's minus 340 minus 340. I'll start with the positive, square root of negative 340 squared minus 4 into 2 into positive 12,000, right? And then I'll divide that by 2a, which is 2 into 2, and then the first answer that I get is 120. So we have got y is equal to 120, or y is equal to if I play forward there, y is equal to 50. So these are the two values of y that you have, right? So now with these two values of y that we are having, remember you have got x is equal, in equation 3, x is 170 minus y. So now from 3, if now you say x is equal to 170 minus y, and the first one is y is equal to 120, and you have got x is equal to 170 minus 120. So the first one is the one where x is 50. So you have got two values, it's 120, and the other one is actually a 50. And then the same thing when y is equal to 50, you find that x is equal to 120. But now the question never specified which one is. Let me check again. The question says the hypotenuse of a right angle triangle is 300 millimeters long, and the circumference is 300 millimeters, is 130 millimeters long, and the circumference is 300 millimeters. Calculate the length of the two other sides. So they never specified whether the height is longer than the breadth. So here the answer is, you can just write your answers and say the length or the height here is, you can say 120 millimeters is still fine, and the breadth, your B, is 50 millimeters. So whatever answer that you're coming up with, whether the height or the breadth, what is important is the two length is the 120 and the 50 millimeters. So remember, this was our question 16. Let us move on to look at question 17. Now when we are looking at question 17, question 17 says the circumference of a right angle triangle is 49.555. Calculate the length of the right angle sides of the hypotenuse. Calculate the length of the right angle sides if the hypotenuse is 20.55 meters long and one right angle side is 2 meters longer than the other. Again, it's a similar question that like the one we looked previously, with just a few changes. Let me just draw that. So it says the circumference of a right angle triangle. Remember, by circumference if this is like what we did before, this is our x, I can use a pen, this is our x, and this is our y, and this is our r. So you remember the circumference means x plus y plus r is equal to 49.55. That's what they are telling us. The circumference of a right angle triangle is that. And then the next question says calculate the length of the right angle sides if the hypotenuse, in which case the r here they told us was 20.555. So you see that we are actually doing the similar version whereby we said x plus y plus 20.555, and then you get a 49.555, and then similarly you come up with your first equation, x plus y is equal to 49.555 minus 20.555. If you do subtract that, I think you'll get your x plus y, the 555 will cancel, 20 minus 49, I think you'll get a 29. So here you got a 29. That's your equation 1, which is 29. And then they said calculate the length of the right angle side if the hypotenuse is that long and one right angle side is 2 meters longer than the other. So if it is 2 meters longer than the other, if we said this is x, but here we can write y in terms of x, 2 meters longer than the other, we can call this y can be, in this case, because it is 2 meters longer than x, it can be x plus 2. I hope you're seeing that. Why? Because if the breadth is x, y can be x plus 2. So now what you are having, you are saying x plus 2 multiplied by x. Okay, let me just do it properly. I'm using the Pythagoras theorem. Let me start with x. Remember, Pythagoras theorem says x squared plus y squared is equal to r squared. That's the Pythagoras. So already my x remains as it is, which is my x squared, but my y is the x plus 2 squared is equal to my r squared, which is my 20.55 squared. So now if you expand that, you're going to have your x squared plus x squared. This will be x times 2, which is plus 4x plus 4 minus 20.555 squared is equal to a 0. So here I'm just working it quickly, but it's a matter of you doing your algebra here, whereby you are now simplifying, which is your 2x squared plus your 4x, and then I can leave it as it is and say plus 4 minus 20.555 squared is equal to 0. I can actually use my Pythagoras theorem and solve it from that, in which case I'll put my bracket, it's minus b, which is minus 4 plus or minus square root of 4 squared minus 4. My a is a 2. My c, now you just need to be careful that the whole c is bracket. If you can see, the c is bracket, is 4 minus, that's the whole c there, it's 4a, and then c is 4 minus 20.555 squared. Don't forget that. And then you close the bracket. That's my c. And then all over 2, and my a is a 2. So if you do that, you get your first answer as 13.5001. So my x here is 13.5001. 500. I mean, to 3 decimal places, this becomes 13.500. That is the first value of x. Now the second value of x, if you delete that, put a negative, you get minus 15.5. It's a negative, so it's O x is equal to negative 15.500. So now you have got these two answers, but remember, this cannot be correct because x can never be negative. So that's the first part. And then they said the second side, remember, the second side is what? Is 2 meters longer. Then you must remember your y. When you say it, your y is your y, if you still remember here, is x plus 2, which is 13.5 plus 2, which is equal to 15.5 in a way. So that becomes the answer to that particular question. Let us move on and look at another question. This particular question is question number 18. And with question number 18, it says, okay, well, I'm going to be looking now at the questions that are involving speed and distance. So that's what I'm going to be looking at now. So now, if we were to look at that particular kind of a question, whereby we are now dealing with the ones of speed, distance, and time, I'm going to look at all of them. But since I've already started with question number 18, it says a man walks X kilometers uphill at 3 kilometers per hour, and then the same distance back at 6 kilometers per hour. What is his average speed? So in here, we are given a scenario uphill. I'll use a line that is going up. So we are saying there is a man starting here at A and finishing here at B. So this particular man is walking uphill. So if I can have my arrow going up, we are saying he's walking uphill at 3 kilometers per hour, and he walks downhill. I mean, if you're walking downhill, your speed will actually increase. He's walking downhill at 6 kilometers per hour. So that is what we're told. And then what we are told, it says the second thing is the same distance. So which means when he's walking to AB, he's also walking from B to A. So it's the same distance. And then the distance that we are told between A and B is that it is X kilometers. So which means going down again, it is X kilometers. So now the question they are saying is, what is his average speed? So the first thing that I want us to remember is, how do you find average speed? So we are saying average speed, I'll call it AS, average speed, is equal to total distance. Remember speed, if you remember, I can draw my triangle like this, and the speed is distance over time. So now, which means average speed is total distance over total time. So that is the formula for finding the average speed, is the total distance traveled over the total time. So now let's start by doing the total distance. What is the total distance that this man traveled? Total distance, which is our D, which is our big D from the formula, is equal to, when he's walking up from A to B is X, and when he's walking down is X. So the total distance is 2X. So that's our total distance. The next one is to find our total time. So let's look at the time from A to B. If you're looking at time from A to B, remember time, according to our triangle here, time is distance over speed, which is d over s, and our distance, remember, is x over our speed is 3. So that is the time. Same thing, time from B to A is equal to distance. Our distance remains as x, but our speed is now 6. So if we find total time, total t is equal to x over 3 plus x over 6. And then if you add that, you are taking a calculator, you are simply adding 1 over 3 plus 1 over 6. In this case, I'm having 1 over 3 plus 1 over 6. 1 over 6. I'm getting a half, so which is half x, or x over 2. So that is the total time. So now if I'm to find, now back to my question, my average speed, my AS, average speed, is total distance, which was my 2x, over my total time, which is my x over 2. And in here, the x will cancel out the x. So what I'm actually having, I'm having 2 divided by a half, which I can use also my calculator. It's 2, be careful how you punch this one, 2 divided by, I put another fraction, and 1 over 2, because it's 2 divided by half, or 2 divided by 0.5, and then I'm getting a 4. So what is my average speed? It is 4 kilometers per hour. That is that. Okay, let us move on to another question that involves speed and distance and time. It is question number 14. Now look at question number 14 again. It's similar. It says a motorist travels from A to B at an average speed of 120 kilometers an hour and returns to A at an average speed of 80 kilometers an hour. Find his average speed for the whole journey. So similarly, you are having a scenario here where you are saying there is this distance A to B, so we have a distance here, and that distance is A, which the motorist travel, and that distance is B. So a motorist travels from A to B at an average speed of, so from A to B, the average speed going this direction, it is 80 kilometers an hour. No, it is 120 kilometers an hour, sorry. They're saying is 120 kilometers an hour. And now when it's going back from B to A, it is 80 kilometers an hour. Right. And then it says find his average speed for the whole journey. This question is exactly similar to the previous question that we just did. Now, what we need to establish in this first case is to find, remember, it is the same distance, so you can say let distance AB be equal to x. So from A to B or B to A is x. So if you have established that, and then I come back to my triangle again, whereby I've got my speed is distance over time. I'm using the similar method that we are using previously. Now the first thing that we look at, if you look at the time taken when you're going to total, remember we last time we looked at total distance and total time. So let's start by total d. It's similar what we did. Total distance is x plus x, which is equal to 2x. This one does not change like previously. And then the total time now, let's look at time AB. Remember, time is distance over speed, which is equal to distance is x over the speed was 120. And then time BA is equal to, again, distance over speed. In this case now it is x over 80. Now total time, total t is x over 120 plus x over 80. So if you use the calculator to find the simplified version of that, you are going to have, remember, x over 120 same as 1, I'm dividing 1 over 120 and plus 1 over 1 over 80. If I do that, I get 1 over 48, so, or x over 48. That's the total time. So now the question is, find his average speed. Now we go back now to say, what is speed? Speed is distance over time, total distance over total time taken. Now what is the total distance? Is 2x. We got our 2x from that. And what is the total time taken? It is x over 48. So in this case then you are dividing 2 divided by 1 over 48, and if you can solve that one, you are saying 2 divided by 1 over 48, and then you are getting that it is 96 kilometers an hour. So that is the way you should have solved that particular problem. Let us look at question number 12. Let me read question number 12. It says, a motorist covers a distance of 210 kilometers. His average velocity was 10 kilometers per hour more. If his average velocity was 10 kilometers per hour more, he would have completed the distance in half an hour less. Calculate his average speed. Now, the most important concept here that I want you to bring across to you is you need to focus on the time. Now, if we remember this particular triangle, if I can have this particular triangle, and you remember that speed is distance over time. So if I'm given that, what is my time? Time is equal to distance over speed. So now let us look at the first statement. It says a motorist covers a distance of 210. So that is the first one. The motorist covers a distance of 210. Then in the first chain, if his average velocity was 10 kilometers per hour more. So let's say let the average velocity be equal to, let me use a. So now initially, if the average velocity is a, which is the speed in this case, and the distance is 210, so we're going to have our first time, t1 is equal to distance over a, which is our average speed or average velocity. And then now that is the first part. Then they are telling us the second time, and then the second time they are saying if his average velocity was 10 kilometers more. So now the new velocity, we're going to have new velocity or new average velocity or new AV is equal to a plus 10, because they are saying it is 10 kilometers more, but the distance is still maintained as 210. So what is your T2 now? Your T2 will be, in this case, which is distance 210 over the time, and distance over speed, which is x, a, in this case, a plus 10. So you see what they're having now. Now they are telling you that these two, if the first time t1 is longer and the second time is shorter, if he increased by this 10 kilometer per hour, there is a second statement that is important that they're mentioning. They're saying if his average velocity was 10 kilometer per hour more, he would have completed the distance in half an hour less. So which means they are saying the difference between T1 and T2 is 30 minutes. So they are saying with speed A, he took longer time. With speed A, he took a longer time compared to speed T2 by 30 minutes. So in other words, they are saying if you take the time T1, you subtract the time it took in the second journey, you are going to get 30 minutes, which is 30 over 60. That's what that statement is saying. If I take the first time it took and I take the second time it took for the journey, I will find out there is 30 minutes that was the difference between those times. Now automatically it brings those two equations. 210 over a minus 210 over a plus 10 is equal to 1 over 2. So you see how those equations are brought about. So in this case here, it's also algebra, whereby you are supposed to solve for a. So in here, the common denominator is, if I can solve that, I will have my 210 a plus t. You can solve it anyway, the way you understand it, but I'm solving this particular fraction. I'm solving that, right? So I'm solving that. So for me to solve that, then I'll use minus 210, if I can maintain the same color, minus 210 into a is equal to 1 over 2. So now if I multiply that times that, which is 210a minus 2100, and then minus 210a all over, and then what I'll be having in here is a plus 10 is equal to 1 over 2. So if I can cancel that, and what I'll be having now, I'll be having minus 2100 over a into a plus 10 is equal to 1 over 2. So now I can cross multiply, this multiplies and the top multiplies that. So I can use the concept of cross multiplying. If I use the concept of cross multiplying, the a will multiply the 1, so I've got my a into a times plus 10, it multiplies the 1, so nothing will change there, is equal to 2 multiplying negative 2100. So now I have got a squared plus 10a plus 4200 is equal to, if I do that, is equal to 0. So the next thing now that I need to do is for me to solve this particular quadratic equation, in which case it will be if I use minus b minus 10 plus b squared, which is square root of 10 squared minus 4 into 1 into 4200 . Just want to check here. I think something, if we can look at this, actually it's a positive here. It must be a positive because 8 times that is 210. 210 times 10 is a positive 2000. It's a positive. Just to correct that, it is a positive because that's why it's going to give us an error. So here it's supposed actually to be because it's a positive here. If we do that, it would be 2. It would be 2 into 2100. So now if you take it back, it would be a negative. So if I bring my calculator and correct that, you can see that I'm having a negative 4200 because I already picked up it will give us a negative answer, an error, because we can't find the square root of a negative in this particular question, over 2 into 1. So now if you do that, you'll find that the first answer you are getting x is equal to a 60. I mean a is equal to 60, or the second one, a is equal to, if I can play back, alright, I'm not getting that again. There's supposed to be a square root here. Anyway, a is equal to a 60. You can get the other number, I think is a negative. So now with a is equal to a 60. So the next question, remember they said calculate his average speed. So now for us to calculate the average speed, we go back to the top of the question. We got our a is equal to 60. So now in here we said average speed is equal to a. So the average speed, which in this case then will become average speed, which is equal to 60 kilometers per hour, because the other one, you know, in a quadratic equation, one question is positive, one is negative, so you can continue and check the other answer, but I think it's a negative one. So that is how you can approach that. And then let us look at the last one, which is question number 11 on the exercise. I mean question number 10, the last one. So if we look at question 10 in this case, question number 10 says a man jogs 9 kilometers an hour and walks 6 kilometers an hour. He jogs from A to B and walks from B to C. Let us have that in a way. Let's try to put that in perspective. So we are having a scenario here. I'll have that, and I'll have that. Okay, so they are saying in between here we have got A, here you have got B, and here you have got C. Though they never told us that AB is bigger than BC, but this is just a sketch. So a man jogs from, okay, a man jogs, to jog is 9 kilometers an hour and to walk is 6 kilometers an hour. So he jogs from A to B. So from A to B in this direction, it's a jog. You start by jogging. It's a jog. So what is it going to do? From A to B, it will be 9 kilometers an hour. He's jogging, right? And then he's continuing this direction. He walk from B to C. If he's walking from B to C, it is going to be 6 kilometers an hour, right? And then it took him 1 hour from A to C. So this whole journey is 1 hour. And then the second version, it says if he walks from A to B, now from A to B, now the second version is walking, and this one is jogging. So if he's walking in here, it's going to be different now. He's going to have 6 kilometers per hour, and he's going to have 9 kilometers per hour. And they are telling us that the journey for this one is 50 minutes, which is equal to 50 over 60 hour, right? Which is 5 over 6. So now, having been told that, they are saying, what is the distance between AC? They say, what is the distance between AC? Now, one approach that you can use in this particular question, we are still using our triangle. If I can use our triangle, still remember, say speed is distance over time. Now, one thing that we need to establish, if I can use a different marker here, one thing, if I can just divide this distance like that, and then have it one on this side and the other on this side. One thing though that we need to establish, let's say let distance AB be equal to X and distance BC be equal to Y. So here, which means this distance will be X, and here this distance will be Y. So whether a person is jogging from A to B or walking from A to B, they will travel the same distance. It's similar to question, I think we did that in question number 18, whereby a man is walking uphill, and when he's coming back, he changes the distance from 3 kilometers, and then when he's coming down, he's now at 6 kilometers. It's similar to question number 18 in one side of this particular line, whereby when he goes with a jog is 9, when he's coming back it's a 6, right? So now what we need to establish then are the equations. So what is the first equation that we're going to come up with? Remember, how do you find distance here? If you look at the formula, it says distance is equal to speed times time. And using our AB, so distance AB, DAB, we said is equal to X, which is equal to speed. We know that the speed that is jogging with, it was 9 kilometer, right? It's 9 kilometer, and times time, let's call this T1, all right? And then here down, we call it the capital T2. Then we'll do the other side. So it's T1, which is 9 times T1. That is our distance AB. Therefore, if we look at the time when he was walking, if you look at the time when he was walking, which is distance AB, but this time I'll say in this case it was a jog, I'll put on top a J. Here I'll put on top a walk. Is the same distance is maintained, but the time is the one that changed, but it's now 6T2. So you see the changes here. The distance here is the same XX, but the time changed. We can now form up an equation here, because the distance is maintained the same on the AB, if distance AB is x and distance AB is x, so we can actually say 9t1 is equal to 6t2. That is an equation that we can form in there. We will call it our equation 1. Using the same concept, we are going to look on the other side. And the other side again of BC is 6 is walking and jogging again. Let's call the distance, we say it is y, and the time we call it small t1, and here we call it small t2. So using the same scenario, I'll say distance BC, but this time on top is walking, remember, is equal to y, which is equal to 6 small t1, and distance BC. Now in this BC, what is it doing? He's jogging. I know it's not the way to present it, but I'm just trying to make it make sense. Jogging is equal to same distance, which is 6. Actually it's 6 t2. So you can again come up with another equation which says because the same distance is maintained, therefore also here 6t1 is equal to, I mean not 6, one of them is supposed to be a 9. The 9 is here on the t2, supposed to be 9 t2. So 6t1 is equal to 9 t2. That is equation number 2. So you have got these equations whereby there is t1 and t2 and the small t1. So you have got 4 unknowns, which means you must come up with also 4 equations. So to come up with 4 equations, then you start to incorporate the concept of time. Remember, there is one taking 1 hour, another one taking how long? It is taking 50 minutes. So what you need to establish and what you need to remember, if I can bring this down, you say, remember there is the t1 which is small, and I mean big, and the t1 that is small. So if I can just say to you t1 plus t1, the time taken for that whole journey is 1 hour. And at the bottom again, if I say t2 plus t2, that time we say it is 5/6 because it's in hours. Do you see now that you have got equation 3 and you have got equation 4? So with these 4 equations, then you can solve that. So now let us use those 4 equations to come up with a solution. So what you'll be having here with these 4 equations, let me have these 4 equations, underline them. This is our first equation, this is our second equation, and you've got our third and our fourth equation. So now, playing around these equations, the first thing that we can maybe try is the t1, equation number 3. It's a matter of solving now. T1 can become 1 minus small t1. So in other ways, I want to get rid of the t1. So I can take where there is t1 into equation 1. Take into equation 1, what will I have? 9. But my t1 there is 1 minus small t1 is equal to 6, and I've got 6 t2. Right? Now the next thing that I'll need now to do is to take to get rid of the t2. So what I'm going to be having is, if I can have my t2 here, what is my t2? My t2 is 5/6 minus the smaller t2, right? So having that, my small t2 is that, I'm going to now come and say in here, that is my t2, I can actually put it in equation, can be equation 1, or I can put it in this t2. So I'm going to have I can have, if I continue here, it will be 9 into 1 minus t1 is equal to 6. Then with that 6, I'll be having 5 over 6 minus t2, because remember I got my t2. Now I've got now two unknowns, which is t1 and t2. Now I can incorporate now equation number 2, which deals with t1 and t2, and then I can say but 6t1 is equal to 9t2, and then I can divide by 6. So what will I have? I'll have t1 is equal to, if you simplify that, 9 over 6, I think it can give you, is it 3 over 4 or 3 over 2? 3 over 2 t2. So that is your t1, meaning I can come to this equation and substitute now where there was t1 using a different pen. Where there is t1 now, I can substitute so that I can remain with only t2. So here I will have my 9, and then I'll have my 1 minus 3 over 2 t2 is equal to 5. Is equal to 6. This is equal to 6. 5 over 6 minus t2. So you see that now I have managed to eliminate everything to do with t1. Now I can expand that. If I'm expanding that, what I'm going to have is, it's a matter of what you call, it can be a matter of me simplifying now, which will be 9 in here minus, if I multiply 9 times 3 is 27 over 2 t2 is equal to, if I multiply there, I'll get 5 minus 6 t2. That's what I'm having. And then if I simplify that, I can collect the like terms. I'll have 9 minus a 5 is equal to minus 6 t2 plus 27 over 2 t2, right? And then with that, I'm going to have my 4 is equal to, if I use a calculator, so I've got negative 6 plus 27 over 2. I've got 15 over 2. So in here I will have 15 over 2 t2. So now I divide by 15 over 2. I divide by 15 over 2, or 7.5. So what is my t2? My t2 is, if I can use it, it would be 4 divided by the answer. I get 8 over 15. So my t2 is equal to 8 over 15. So I've got my t2 now as 8 over 15. But now you play around to say, if t2 is 8 over 15, but you remember there is our t1, which is 3 over 2 times t2. So which means from here, our t1 is equal to 3 over 2 times 8 over 15, which will be equal to, so if I can get my t1 there, as you can see, it is 3 over 2 times 8 over 15, and you can get 4 over 5. So which means my t2 2 is for my T1, sorry, my T1 in this case becomes 4/5, right? Now remember the question says, the whole question says, what is the distance between A and C? So if you go back now, having known the times, if you go back here to now find the distance, remember we said let the distance be x, distance AB, and distance BC be y. So now to find x, we said, how do you find x? X is equal to 91, and what is y? We said our y was equal to, if you remember, 61, but I think we managed to solve for t, in which we said T1, and then T1 was 4/5. So if I can use that concept to say here, if I can use the concept to say, I know what is my T1. My T1 here is equal to 4/5. So which means I can now find my what? My distance. Distance BC is equal to 6 times what? 4/5, which is equal to, that distance then becomes 24/5. So kilometers. Remember, we put it aside, is distance what? Is distance BC, but we still need to find the other distance, and the other distance is what? Is distance AB. So now to find distance AB, we need to know one of our time, either the bigger T1 or the bigger T2. So now for you to do that, let's look at our equations again. There is our equation, T1 and T1 linking, so that we can get one of the bigger distance. If I can use that equation, it was saying T1 plus T1 was equal to 1, but remember T1 is 4/5, so T1 plus 4/5 is equal to 1. Therefore T1 is the same as 1 minus 4/5, in which case it is equal to 1/5. So you have got your T1. So I'm going to take T1 as 1/5, and you have got an equation here, as we're saying. There is the equation which says x is equal to 9T1. So if I can, because of my space, I can try to write it here, x, using a different marker. It says x is equal to 9T1, and T1 is 1/5, which is equal to 9 times 1/5, and you get 9/5. So now what you are having now, you are supposed to add your 9/5 and your 24/5. So that is the total distance that you are going to have, your 9/5 and your 24/5. If I can take this below, I'm then going to say total distance is equal to 9/5 plus 24/5, and then the total distance will be 33. 9 plus 24 is 33/5, and then if you use a calculator then to solve that one, 33 divided by 5 is 6.6 kilometers. So the total distance is 6.6 kilometers. That's the distance AB, which is the distance that has been traveled. So this is how you can approach that question. It was a bit long because they involved two different speeds, and it needs you to be very careful with your equations. And actually the most challenging thing in here is that it involved 4 equations, and you are supposed to solve with elimination of a simultaneous equations with 4 equations. Now we have come to the end of our lesson. Hope it was something that you could be able to understand.
I reach out for my dreams. I reach out vision. I reached out for help that I thought I needed. 'Cause reaching out is the proof of